Good evening and welcome to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, final edition before we get to the NFL draft. With us, as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Eric Eager, the VP of R&D at PFF.com, Pro Football Focus. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. You can hear my show at 810WHB.com. And gentlemen, we are here. It is draft week. We are, less than 48 hours away from the draft being up and running, and the Kansas City Chiefs are busy, should be busy. I don't know. What do we think here? Let's start with you, Jeff. How pivotal is this draft for the Kansas City Chiefs? Is this the one that they got to hit on since they haven't been able to be big players in free agency? It makes this draft absolutely pivotal for the Kansas City Chiefs and their continued success.
Well, I know it's draft week because I got my draft binder. I feel like Eric Eager got all this material to cover to talk about the draft today. As far as the Chiefs go, yeah, it is pivotal. It's a huge draft because it's the first draft where we're going to find out what this team is going to be for the next decade. I think that is the number of picks. The 2 first-round picks, the trade that sent Tyreek Hill away, the remaking of the offensive supporting cast, all these things speak to what Andy Reid and Brett Veach, when they got rid of John Dorsey, the Chiefs, and then inserted Brett Veach and made Andy Reid and he the brain trust of this team. This is their opportunity to show us what it's all about. And I'm big fans of both those guys. Have a pretty good relationship with both those guys, but at the end of the day, John Dorsey was a big factor in what this team became over the last 5 years, including the quarterback. And so, yeah, I do want to see what they do with this draft. I do want to see what they come out of it with. I think that in some cases, like for every draft, you're not going to know until 4 years from now what they did. But I think that they need to find some difference makers, guys who could be on the field this year in key positions. And so, yeah, I do think that everything they've done for the last 4 years with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback is over. And this is a new chapter that's beginning with this draft.
Eric, how about you? How pivotal, how important is this draft for the long-term success of the Kansas City Chiefs?
It's big. I'm excited for it. This is the first time since 2008 that the Chiefs have had multiple first-round picks in the same draft. And obviously, under similar circumstances, they traded a superstar in Jared Allen that year. They traded a superstar in Tyreek Hill this year. Basically they've been hit or miss as to whether or not they're going to have a first-round pick. And to Jeff's point, this is a complete 180 from the way in which they were doing business when Patrick Mahomes was on his rookie contract, when Patrick Mahomes was on the, sort of very early stages of his contract. And so when there's uncharted waters, it's always good to see how a team does when they're in their first. I mean, this isn't a new regime, but this is a regime that's going to act fundamentally different, I think, than the way that they did before. The way in which they have to operate is completely different. And I'm excited to see what they do. This is a draft that I think falls nicely for them. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity, as we talked about on your show today. Edge, corner, wide receiver, interior defensive line, offensive line, like all those positions are accessible to the Chiefs right now.
It is, I think for a lot of people, I think for this team, I think it's a very important draft because they've had to wave goodbye to some guys, right? We've seen them, say goodbye to Tyrann Mathieu. That was big. Trade away Tyreek Hill. Those are necessary evils that come with the fact that your quarterback is now expensive. They were able to carry those players, but now they've got to turn those over with cheap players. So pivotal, I think, is probably, a little much to say like, but if you want to, I think if you want to win this division, they've got to hit on some guys, right? I think they've got to find some starters. I think when you look at the depth chart, and we've known it we've talked about it all throughout the year as we were looking ahead to 22, during 21 saying, look, there's 18 guys under contract next year, right? And you say that, and we talked about it in terms of the cap, that 18 guys and pushing up against towards the top of cap, as in, hey, you're not going to be able to keep everybody. But 18 guys meant there are only 18 players. It takes 22 guys just to start, right? Plus 3 specialists. That's 21 players. They had 18. They didn't even have a full team for 22 during 21. That's a fact. And I think this is the most important draft of Brett Veach's tenure. Doesn't mean if he doesn't get it right, he's out. But I don't think there's any way you can look at this team and say they're okay at defensive end. They're okay at corner. Even wideout. If one goes down, look, did they lose a big-time player in Tyreek Hill? They did. But can they play without him? They can right now if everyone's healthy. But does Juju Smith-Schuster scream health? I can tell you I've had Marquez Valdez-Scantling in fantasy football, and there's a number of red check marks or red injury signs next to his name during the course of the year, and sitting there on game day wondering whether or not he's going to be ready to go. I do think it's very important to not only come away with a couple of starters, but to get some good depth because they're lacking that depth now, Jeff.
Yeah, well, and look, I think it's pivotal not just because of the next chapter in the Mahomes era, but just for two reasons. One, because when Mahomes took over this job, he walked into a team that was ready-made to go to the next level. I saw you had Alex Smith on. You were talking to him about whatever was, being the top pick and all, everything like that. But it was just that team had a Pro Bowl left tackle, whatever you think of Eric Fisher, had an All-Pro right tackle, had a receiver who had come into his own, who was already on his way to being a Pro Bowl guy, future Hall of Famer, a tight end who come into his own, who was going to be a future Hall of Famer. All these things were in place. Yeah, they had to fix the defense, but they had a lot of good things working for them and a lot of cap space to go out and make moves for Sammy Watkins and Frank Clark and all these people who helped them win a championship.
And Smith,
Matthew. Yeah.
Smith
exactly.
helped them.
Yep.
I mean, Smith helped them immensely by having his best season as a pro and getting a third-round pick and Kendall Fuller on a rookie deal as part of that trade too.
Yep. And so all these things factor into it. But the key thing here is we look at all these moves being made around the league in the AFC. What we do know is that AFC teams have been able to draft well, have been able to build rosters well. And so the Chris Ballards, the Tom Telescos, Eric DeCosta in Baltimore, these teams, Brandon Beane in Buffalo, these guys are building rosters. And so they've been doing this for the last 4 years, and the Chiefs have been riding high. And so now we have to see if the Chiefs can maintain that pace by keeping pace with what these teams are doing during this week.
I do think, you talk about when you say these other AFC teams, are you insinuating that the Chiefs have not been drafting well?
No. I'm saying that these teams have been building up in hopes of catching the Chiefs. And so what I'm saying is, and this is no knock on Brett Veach, he's made some great moves as far as free agency. He's had some good draft picks, but he was not the guy who built the team that won a championship. Okay. Now is the time to prove you can build a team that can win a championship that has your own fingerprints on it.
Yeah. Eric, do you agree that they need players to come out of this and start and be pivotal guys? Like, this isn't a year that they can just have, we're developing these guys. It's the second year. They're going to need guys to hit the ground running out of this draft if they are going to win the AFC West.
Yeah. They need, I mean, look, it's hard to say, it's hard to pin it down on any one position, but they need somebody to rush the passer, right? There's no one on this team from the edge that can rush the pass. I mean, unless Joshua Kane-Doe can make big strides, unless Frank Clark finds a fountain of youth and even then becomes good. And they need somebody to rush the passer. They probably need a right tackle. They can get by with Andrew. Everything. I think defensive end's the one spot where they have to come out of the draft and maybe veteran free agency with a starter. That has to be the case. Everything else is what you said. You could squint and say, some combination of the 2 to 3, Hardman, Smith-Schuster, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling are probably going to be fine, but they can make that group great with a first-round wide receiver, in my opinion. Corner, Fenton, Snead, and Baker can be okay, but it'd be nice to get a first-round guy to play corner there. Safety, interior defensive line, offensive line, all those things can be passable for them. They need a guy that can rush the passer. And I just, unless they go out and get a Melvin Ingram again or a Jerry Hughes or somebody like that, that player is going to have to come from this draft.
16 to 18 first-round players. That's what Brett Veach said in his press conference, Jeff. What does that mean to you? What is there anything you can glean from that? First of all, to put that information out there is, I would think, for a reason.
Yeah.
Is that him saying we're open for business here? Because listen, I want to get to these players. Now, I want to be clear. He said there are 3 quarterbacks, or other teams may have 3 quarterbacks that are first round grades as well. So, we're not putting that in there. And there'll be some other differences of opinions that could slide some of those guys down. But the likelihood that he gets 1 or 2 of those guys at 29 and 30 would not seem to be good.
Yeah.
Right? I can, to use Eric's line, I can squint to a scenario where one of them gets there, right? This DN that isn't really a Spagnuolo DN goes before him. This wideout isn't really their type of wideout, goes before one of their guys. I maybe could come up with a scenario for that, but is this a statement to say that they're moving up, or is this a statement to say that I'm not going to be interested in my spot, I'm ready to move down? Is it both?
I think it's both. I think in that same press conference, he did say that then he doesn't foresee any kind of home run swings coming,
right,
where they're going to go up. So I think the real question
is the term haymaker.
Haymaker. Yeah, I like home run better.
I do too.
Being a writer, haymaker is kind of a 1950s boxing term, I think he's probably setting the stage to let people know if they don't do something in the first round and trade back, don't be disappointed by that. I think that you're right. I think he is putting out feelers to teams to say, hey, look, if there's a quarterback out there, which could really be the wild card in all this, like who's sitting there at quarterback towards the end of the first round to trade up to find a trade partner with. I think there are going to be teams that look at guys like Desmond Ridder, no offense to Eric's first round pick in our mock draft, Sam Howell, who might be there. Teams that, like the Lions, they don't take Malik Willis, as Eric did in our mock draft. You'll be looking for quarterbacks, but I do think I think it's a good position to be in if you're the Chiefs, because you really are looking at the sweet spot of this draft being 30 to 60, and they've got 5 picks in that area already. And so why not get more value there? We talked about this as far as using 12 picks overall. It's like, why not balance that out and look into the next year's draft to have some picks in those areas, or if don't get a first rounder out of it. But Howie Roseman for the Eagles said the same thing about their situation. He's like, let's balance this out and make sure we can go into each draft and we've got a surplus of picks in the area that we like. They've done pretty well. As much as we talk about how great this team's been over the last 4 years, there's only been one player who's been a first round pick who's been a key player for them. Everybody else has been second, third, fourth, fifth round or lower. So I do think they can make some hay in that area. I'm not as concerned about whether they can get a difference maker at 29 or 30. I think it's more important that you get a variety of difference makers for you in 2, 3, and 4.
To be clear, in the last 5 years, they've only had 2 first-round picks, right? So Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be the guy who hasn't made the impact. Patrick Mahomes would be the guy who has. Orlando Brown was a player. He was one of them. Mahomes really counts as 2 of the first-round picks in there. I'm trying to remember who was where did 19 – oh, Frank Clark. That's where the
2016 they traded back for Chris Jones, and 2015 was.
But I'm saying these guys where they were drafted when they came into the league. Frank Clark was a second round pick. Like all these guys were. Yeah. Is anybody aside from Mahomes a first round pick in that group?
The other first round pick you would point to, the last first round pick that made a positive impact was Marcus Peters in 15.
Okay,
but again, they haven't.
And it's not to say that Veach. It's not to say that Veach doesn't covet first round guys. Yeah. It's just like usually they get to the Chiefs after they've sucked somewhere else, like Baker, Sammy Watkins, Mike Hughes, Kelvin Benjamin. Kelvin Benjamin's a first, right? Like he covets these guys after they go somewhere else, but he's not, he's not using them. Jeff's, I think this is the thing I get annoyed with the whole number of first round. You don't have first round picks, Chiefs. You have the 29th and the 30th pick in the draft, right? You are a trolley ride away from 2 second-round picks, right? Like this whole thing, like you're either, this idea that like Aiden Hutchinson's a first-round pick and so is Quay Walker or whatever. Like those things, that's not that, and I also think there's enough, like, and so I know Veach doesn't think this way. I know my contact with the Chiefs, like when I asked, I said, does he actually believe this? He does. There's enough heterogeneity in boards that if you only have 16 to 18 players that you will take in the first round, there's a really good chance that one or more will fall to you at 29 and 30. That's just the way it works. Seattle, Vegas, like these teams, like their boards are so much more different than you think they are, in these processes that, like, will it be the one guy that you really like? No. It'll be one of those six, but it's sort of the birthday problem where, like, if you're in a room of 23 or more people, two people are going to share a birthday. Will they share your birthday? Chances are pretty low, but it's more than 50% chance, right? Will the Chiefs' favorite player from 14 to 18 make it to 29? Probably not. Will one of them? Yes. That I think is like the tricky thing here. I hope he doesn't like use that as a reason to move up. Because again, for me, like I agree with Jeff, 30 to 60 is the sweet spot of this draft. And there's a number of players that if they just get 4 guys there, and let's say they bat 500, right? Let's say you take 2 edges from 30 to 60 and you get one guy that can rush the passer. That's one more guy that could rush the passer than you already had. Let's say you get a safety who's decent, or let's say corner and wideout. Let's say you go 1 for 2. Right? Like any combination, like let's say you take corner wide out and you take 2 edge players, and the 2 edge players happen to be the 2 out of 4 that crush. Now you got 2 pass rushers when you had none, right? And you can still patch around wide receiver and corner because of what we said previously. Like you got to play the numbers game, because as you said on your show today, when you were sort of prompting this question, which like if you go up and if you think this guy's wide receiver 1, you're probably wrong.
Right.
And to take 2 picks and move up and get him.
Yeah.
You're gonna instead of having 2 swings of the bat, you get 1, and it's not even that good of a swing.
Right. And I'll give those numbers and as something we looked up, and I'll give credit to Curtis Siebold, who works with me on the radio show, who did all the legwork on this. We took the last 33 drafts and who was the first wideout taken, the second wideout taken, third wideout taken. And then we measured who was the one who had the most career yards. Out of the last 33 years, only 6 times was the first wideout taken the one who had the most career yards. Not that that's the end-all, be-all measurement, but to use one of Eric's lines, we all know the scale. Okay, right? We can at least get our arms around what it was. Second overall wide receiver taken had the most career passing yards in 7 of them. But in 11 of them, they went after the first 10 wideouts, including the 18th wide receiver taken in 2016, who's number 1. It's Tyreek Hill. The 27th wideout taken in 2010 was Antonio Brown. The 43rd wideout in 1991 was Keenan McCardell, right? So, like, out of this group, 6 went first, 7 went second. Only 1 was the 3rd wideout. Only 1 was the 4th. Only 1 was the 5th. 2 were the 6th. 2 were the 7th. None in the 8th. 2 were the 9th wide receiver taken, right? But then you get, like I said, 11 guys that were after the first 10 wideouts that ended up being the best wide receiver in their class. It basically comes down to if you move up to get the top wideout, whoever you think it is, you have an 18% chance that he's actually going to be the best one. Less than 1 in 5. If you say, okay, but I just want to get one of the top 2, you have a 39% chance of getting one of the top 2 wideouts or getting the top wideout if you have either the first or second wide receiver that you're taking. That math does not say trade up for a wideout.
Yeah, and what people don't talk about, the talking heads like me, on national media, it's so exciting to talk about the show the highlights and show Jameson Williams running by whatever Arkansas safeties or Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave. It's very hard to project wide receivers in today's game because the way they attack the game at the college level, they're getting free releases. They're not seeing really sophisticated coverages. People aren't getting up on them, pressing them as much. They have to do so many different things at this level that they're not doing in college football. So to just say, well, this guy's going to be great because he has these many stats, he ran this 40 time, or his number of explosive plays are off the charts, it just doesn't add up. You have to be very, very smart about how you defensive end. Pass rushers are the same way now, to be honest with you. But it's just with that position, especially wide receiver, I totally agree with you. It's like to fall in love with a guy or to think he makes a ton of sense because of his highlights or who he played for or who he played against. There's way more involved in that now. And it's funny, I heard you guys talking about on your show Julio Jones in 2011.
Right.
This draft class, if it's really all it can be, could be like that 2011 draft class where you had guys like Richard Sherman going in the 6th round and Justin Houston going in the 3rd round, where you just had tons of guys who ended up being great players who ended up being drafted after the 1st round.
Well, was it in the Michael Hawley book? Wasn't it detailed? And like, this I was telling, as I said on the show, like I always give Thomas crap because it's like, yeah, you made like
Thomas is Thomas Dimitrov.
Thomas, we have a great vibe, so I just call him by his first name, So like, but right. I always give him crap because like, that was just a gutsy trade. It's like one of the few ones that's like that sort of lopsided. And the player ends up being just good enough for it to work, but like that's so few and far between. And you think about that draft, who was the biggest detractor of Dimitrov internally for that trade? It was his former boss, Bill Belichick, who thought Jonathan Baldwin and Julio Jones were the same player. Like, and it just shows again like how uncertain all these things are, right? Like it shows how, and again, like Julio wasn't even the number 1 wide receiver taken that draft. Julio Jones was taken by the Bengals at 4, and he. AJ Green had a great career too, but like
and receiver worth a damn.
Yeah, exactly. So, and so I think again, like there's just so much uncertainty that clouds this thing, right? You look at 2016, Josh Doxson, Laquan Treadwell, Corey Coleman, and then in round 2, it's Michael Thomas, right? The guy. He basically has those 3's career stats combined. 2014 is the one, again, that everybody loves. The top pick in the 2014 draft was Sammy Watkins at 4, right? And then after him was Mike Evans and Jarvis Landry and all those guys, Odell. And again, like I think the issue with the draft is overconfidence is just like your biggest enemy. Like overconfidence is your biggest enemy. And I think part of what Jeff talked about contributes to it because the wide receiver position, the guy's got to fit, right? And so if you're like, oh, this guy fits us perfectly, then you ignore sort of all the other uncertainty, kernels in the system. So it's tough, but like that's a short way to say I hope he doesn't trade up.
Yeah, no, because when he adds on the part about 30 to 60 being the sweet spot, Jeff, is that a statement that you think, okay, he wants to stay there or even back up a little bit and use the 3rds and 4ths to get more in that 2nd round? Is the dream, one of those 29 or 30, and then 4 2nd round picks? Is that the dream scenario for the Chiefs?
I think it is. I mean, obviously economically it works out better for you in the long run, but I think that there's more. And I think every GM is got their strengths. And I think Brett Veach probably sees himself after doing this for a few years as someone who has a better feel for players within that range. And I think there's a lot more that come with picking 1st round picks. I think you have to. There's a lot more ego involved in it. There's a lot more pressure with the player and the administration. You heard Alex Smith on your show talking about that, saying when he got drafted 1st overall, 2005, fuck, I got to come out and I got to be perfect when I play football here. I got to come out here and deliver. I think there's a lot less pressure on guys like Chris Jones, a lot less pressure on Justin Houston, a lot less pressure on people who are in that range, and a lot more of an understanding about how you're going to get the most out of them as a coaching staff. So I do think that there's probably for Veach, who's a longtime scout, a better understanding of what makes those players click, because you're not going to fall in love with, again, the 40 time or the short shuttle or the broad jump, all this stuff that we talk about when we're talking about these guys ad nauseum. You're falling in love with, does this guy like playing football? Does this guy really fit what we want to do? You're asking better questions when you're in that range.
I believe that the dream scenario is one of the picks at 29 or 30, moving down for a 2nd and a 3rd. There are different combinations that can get you there. The Vikings was one of the teams that I picked, and then packaging 4ths with 3rds to get back in another 2nd round pick. I think that's the dream scenario. I've run the simulator on pff.com, and when I've tried to not take defensive ends up high, I end up being left wanting, right? Like I think at about 45, 50 maybe is as low as you can go to make sure that you're going to be able to get those guys. And I think that they absolutely have to come away with at least 2 DNs. In fact, I would not hate a scenario that if they have 8 picks or maybe they get it to 9 picks in those first 4 rounds, if the only positions they draft are corner, wideout, tackle, and edge. And if it's 4 and you take 2 of each, or you take 3 of one, 2 and 2, like throwing numbers at your most important positions, because all those are priority positions too. You're not trying to find a guard. They're priority positions that warrant you taking extra swings at it. And I think if you come up with extra ones of any of them, they're also all positions that more than one guy plays, right? Throwing 5 picks at quarterback, if you hit 1, 4 of them do nothing. In this one, if you get a great one and an okay one in any of these scenarios, the okay one still has a place. An okay right tackle could be your starting left guard, right? An okay corner could be your dime corner. An okay wideout could be your fourth wideout.
And the other thing is, you don't have access. Like, what the Chiefs need is high-end players to complement Patrick Mahomes, right? And if you're not going to do what the Rams did, which is trade your future for the present, and there was a great study by Over the Cap that talked about sort of the top 20 paid players at every position and how many of them were accessible via free agency. And when you look at the positions that are accessible via free agency are the non-premium positions: guard, center, linebacker, running back, safety, right? So if you want high-end ability from those positions, you're going to have to draft them, right? If you want like the great wide receivers don't hit free agency. The great quarterbacks don't hit free agency. Like Trent Williams is like, I mean, he was available via free agency, but the Chiefs were never going to be able to match, right? And like, so if you want a tackle who can be a cornerstone offensive lineman for you, you got to take him, right? You got to take him on Thursday or Friday or whatever. And that's, I think, a huge aspect of this, which is, the positional value aspect of it and throwing numbers at the problem, to Petro's point.
Yeah, I do think that I can't see a scenario for the haymaker, right? The home run swing. I don't see the player because the cost to get up to him. Does somebody think one of the 7 or 8 best guys are going to make their way to 22? I don't. I think we're talking about getting clear into the top 10, which would take 29, 30, and 50. And I don't see the guy that's worth going up that far. Jeff, do you see anybody that's worth going up that far?
No, nobody that would be there. I think that the best edge rushers, and by the best, I'd say the ones who are being lauded the most, with Trayvon Walker being in that strange. I saw he's supposed to be odds on the top pick now, which still blows my mind that a guy who has done that little in college could be the top pick in the draft. But once you get past him, once you get past Aiden Hutchinson, once you get past Jermaine Johnson, and who's the fourth guy? Kayvon Thibodeau. Everybody else is kind of in the same boat, and it's just you're projecting. And what I would say about that, and what I think the Chiefs are thinking as far as this goes, is that I think edge is of all these spots we're talking about, edge is going to be the most important for them to get. But it's also, you look at corner, you look at receiver, those spots, as important as they are, the way they are positioning themselves, they're not placing as much importance on them, which sounds strange to say, but the way they use their corners, you don't need to have some Sauce Gardner type guy playing for you. You can find a guy in the second, third. What are you going to say?
But I'm just curious, Jeff, is do they play that way because they don't have the corner, or is that how they want to play so they don't need the corners, right? Like, is that Steve Spagnuolo saying, I don't have a 1, so this is how I got to play it, right? Like, would it be different, if you did get one of the top corners?
I think we'll find out, but philosophically, I think it's more of a philosophical thing that they do with the corners, as opposed to like not having great players to use there.
Yeah, there's actually, when I asked this question, I was, fairly, in 2019 draft, for example, the top corner was DeAndre Baker at 30. That was kind of right where they picked. Now they evidently they like Baker, but you know they haven't had access to these players all that frequently either. Interestingly, this might be the first year where there is one. You know, with Kair Elam, you know some of the Dax Hill kind of players, but also I'm trying to think of Andrew Booth, like the sort of outside guys as well.
I listen. I don't. So, do you see a guy that's worth going up into the top 10?
No, I don't.
Eric?
No. Like what did I said? I said this to you on your show today. I think there's one guy, Jameson Williams, who I think is a difference maker. Like all the other guys, like would you really be happy if the Chiefs traded a mountain to get a tackle after they trade a first round pick to get a tackle last year? No. Would you be happy if they traded a mountain? Like they can't get the top 3 edge guys, right? Thibodeau, Hutchinson or Walker. They don't want Jermaine Johnson. I can tell you that right now. So then after that, like it's Karlaftis, whose prop is already 22.5. It's Mafe and Ibekite, whose prop is right where the Chiefs are, right? So I think reasonably they're not going to go up for an end either. There's maybe a chance that Thibodeau falls. But I'll say the same thing about Thibodeau as I'll say about Williams. If Jameson Williams gets to pick, let's say 12, a palpable area for them to move up, there is information about Williams that is being revealed by his fall in the draft that will negatively affect the Chiefs wanting to draft him, right? If Jameson Williams' knee is fine and there's no other medical issues and there's no other issues by the league, he's being taken 8th by the Falcons, right? And the Chiefs can't access him from 29 and 30. If he falls to like 12, 13, 14, then the league is concerned about his knee. And if the league is concerned about his knee, the Chiefs are probably concerned about his knee, right? So he wouldn't necessarily be, worthy of 29 and 30 a package up. And I think the same, like Thibodeau is the same thing. Like if Thibodeau really has these character issues that are all made up in theory, and he's moving 9, 10, 11, 12, then the Chiefs probably feel about him the same way that the league does. I think. It could be wrong, but that's my thought.
Is that fair to say? Like, is it really that far? It's 8 or 8 is he's fine. 12 is he's fine. You go. I mean, is that? I get the theory of it, but like, you really think that, Eric? That like, if he's at 12, well, look out. I mean, like he is hurt. Like, I mean, he just got hurt. Like, let's not forget what 3.5 months.
Yeah, mid January. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's not 100%. Like things are going well. We know the ACL success rate is very good. I mean, is it? I
guess here's my thought. Would you move 29 and 30 to go up and get the second best wide receiver in the draft?
I wouldn't.
Well, no.
I don't think the Chiefs. So the only reason that they would go up and get him, in my opinion, is if he's the number 1 wide receiver in the draft. If he falls behind Garrett Wilson and all these other, like, let's say a quarterback goes before him or something like that, then there's evidence to suggest that he's not the number 1 wide receiver in their mind.
Okay, but see, you're taking an uncertainty and then making that the foundation and then building on it, right? First of all, my whole point of the exercise about the wideouts is you don't know who the number 1 and number 2 and number 3 wideout is. Somebody's going to go first. Somebody's going to go second. Somebody's going to go third. But I remember walking along on my old man walk, listening to you and George Cheruri on the PFF Forecast podcast, doing a mock draft 2 years ago and had Henry Ruggs going like 3rd or 4th overall. And it was like, this is the guy, the best speed. He's got to be – I mean, look at where – and forget about the off-the-field stuff, which obviously makes the pick just an absolute disaster that the Raiders made. But even on the field, he wasn't hitting like that. So, like, whatever, we can sit here and say
he was the first wide receiver taken to that draft, by the way.
He was, and he is not the best. As a matter of fact, if I look at my chart here,
Lompoc he is.
That was what 2020. He's not even in the top 5. Here are the top 5 wideouts from 2020. Now, limited time, but it was make sure I've got this. It was Justin Jefferson, who went 22nd, CeeDee Lamb, who went 17th, So that's the fifth wideout, the third wideout. T. Higgins, who went 33. He was the seventh wideout. Chase Claypool went 49, was the 11th wideout. And Darnell Mooney, 173, was the 25th wideout.
I'm going to defend my honor a little bit here. I'm going to go back to 2000.
Are you looking up the report you wrote? Is that what you're doing right now?
So we did have Ruggs. We had Ruggs at 4. Okay. We had Judy at 6th. I think probably decent. We had CeeDee Lamb at 11, a little high. Jalen Reagor at 13.
This is overall. This is overall, not position.
We had Justin Jefferson two spots ahead of where he went. I think we were just high on wide receivers. You
had Ruggs as the 4th best player in the draft?
We had him going 4th to the Giants, who needed a wide receiver because they just traded Odell. Okay. And then we had T. Higgins going in our round 1.
Right? Well, I'm not. Listen, my point is not you guys don't know what you're doing. You know that. I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah. But there's a ton of uncertainty, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's my point. So to go back to what you said was, would you trade 29 and 30 for the second best wideout? I would immediately answer you if I don't really know who the second best wideout is. I'll take a shot at it, but I'm going to throw numbers at the position. And my answer would be no. If I decide I have to have a wideout, I'd rather take 2 guys at 29 and 30 than use 29 and 30 to go up and get 1 guy. And I think, number one, having 2 wideouts is a good thing. And if I'm pretty good and I get a good guy, like in your case, in that draft, if you'd come away with Justin Jefferson and T. Higgins instead of going up to get Henry Ruggs, I mean, you're GM of the year.
Yeah.
Right? Like, now, not every draft falls like that. Right? That's
even if you think like that year, if you get Darnell Mooney in round 3, like that guy can be a useful player for you. I mean, my biggest thing with the Chiefs is like, you get MVS, you get Juju, that buys you some time so you don't have to be desperate to get a wide receiver. The Frank Clark thing, I think in their mind is we're going to at least have a veteran end on the team so we don't have to be desperate. Like, let's say, Soren, your guy, Boye Mafe, who I also think the Chiefs like. Boye Mafe, let's say he goes 27th. Let's say Arnold Ebiketie goes 28th. And you're sitting there at 29, you're like, oh, crap. I either have to go Nick Benito, Drake Jackson, the Paschal, the kid from Kentucky. And like you're trying not to pick them 20 picks too high, right? You don't have to, because you do have Frank Clark if the ball is snapped the next day. It's not great, but at least he's there. Wide receiver, it's the same thing. You're a lot better off at wide receiver than you are at end. But you know what I'm saying? At every single position, the Chiefs have somebody who can play, just not play effectively. And so, again, at 29 and 30, like you've bought yourself a situation where you don't have desperation. That is a huge feather in your cap here. And my colleague wrote this last year, is the asymmetry of reaches, right? Like, and this is kind of where my worldview about if a guy's falling, there's a reason thing. Like my colleague Timo Riske went through and said, if you draft a guy ahead of the consensus board, they generally fail. Like if you reach on a player, the average production is less than expected. But there's no such, but if a player goes after his consensus big board, so let's say you look at the athletic consensus big board, a guy is 14th and he goes 20th, like Derwin James or something like that. On average, that guy still performs as the 20th best player because it takes 32 teams to let a guy fall and it takes 1 team to reach on a guy, right? And that like market-based price discovery type idea makes sense in the draft. So, and again, it's only 4 or 5 teams. As you said, the difference between 8 and 13 or so. And so but it does, the evidence does add, right? As you sort of get more and more teams that pass on a guy, it does become something, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And I do think there's, everyone who's done any kind of fantasy draft, any will sit there and tell you, I mean, even buying a house is the same thing. Why is no one buying this? Like you walk in and you're like, the price should, was supposed to be $100. Like, and this is a $500 house. What the hell is wrong with it? Yeah. I mean, like that's just natural human instinct. When you say what's going on here, somebody must know something. I'm afraid. And I've got this other safer option over here. Let me try and figure out what the hell is happening. I think it's just natural human instinct. I want to propose the idea. Listen, the Chiefs have, let's be clear. When they got Patrick Mahomes, nobody saw it coming, right? They did a press conference talking about who they were going to take at 31, and then an hour later had Orlando Brown. right? Nobody saw it coming, right? What's the wild card that could pop up here? It's not trading up for Jameson Williams. Everybody's projecting that, right? I don't even think it's trading. Is there a player on their roster? They've been moving on from expensive players. I'll give you a name. What is the chance that Orlando Brown is not a Chief come Saturday or Sunday? Because the question was brought up by Todd Lebo, who works with me at Sports Radio 810 WHB, at Brett Veach's press conference about the fact that Orlando Brown, they haven't even started contract negotiations with Orlando Brown because he doesn't have an agent right now. He's between agents, but said to be considering representing himself.
I thought he was honeymooning with Mahomes and his wife.
He's still recovering. He's still recovering from that wedding.
The wedding
still down the island in the Caribbean.
Yes. Is that I'm here to tell you that if I'm the general manager right now and I don't even have anyone to start swapping numbers with, and I know that nothing really gets done until you get to the deadline, and that's the deadline of the franchise tag, where you got to get a deal done. That's going to be here quicker than you think. We're starting to get to that point. It's clear Orlando Brown doesn't want to go to OTAs and minicamp. He's not going to be anywhere near that. It's also clear, and I know we're going to get to the wideouts in a minute, and maybe this will serve as our segue there, but the new thing is if you don't have your deal, you're not coming to camp. There was no way Tyreek Hill was coming to camp. The Chiefs moved him. Deebo Samuel's not going to camp. A.J. Brown is not going to OTAs and minicamp. He's not showing up for that. I'm not sure what's going on with DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin, but I know those two, and Metcalf has the same agent as the other two guys. If that's the new thing, how sure are we that Orlando Brown is going to show up at training camp without a deal? And if he says, I want 24 or 25 million, are you better off seeing what you can get for him now on draft day when you can maneuver around and get you a talented young offensive tackle in this draft?
Well, I think the big issue though is like you're not allowed to hold out, right? Yeah. Like the fines are pretty immense.
If you sign it.
But you still like if you hold out of camp, like your fines are huge.
I don't think so. You can't be fined because you're not under contract.
If you don't sign the franchise tender.
Yeah, unless something's changed, he can sit there and walk right up to the day before. Now the Chiefs can pull it, can pull the tag, which then makes him a free agent at a time.
With all these teams that don't, like that was Josh Norman, right?
Yes.
The Panthers pulled on Josh Norman.
Yes.
If you do that, like that's the risk you take when you don't sign it, though. And that is the risk, and that is what people are talking about right now, which is, you think about all those free agents we talked about today on your show, they're still unsigned. Like, if that's a risk that he takes by not signing it, it's like the Chiefs could move on from him in the draft, untag him, and then he goes, and there's no teams that need a tackle, no teams that have salary cap space. He's screwed, right? Like, so. There's a little bit of risk on his end too.
But who's playing left tackle for the Chiefs, though? I mean,
I'll get to a theory. I'll get to a theory here in a minute.
Okay.
The flip side, though, is he can walk it right up to say 2 weeks before first game and say, "This is how much I need to get ready. Now I'm signing." Right? If you're the Chiefs, do you want to jerk around with that? Like you may have no choice, right? And we can talk about that, but is that ideal? Let's just first say, is that an ideal? Is where they sit right now, looking at a guy who, how long does it take to make up your mind on an agent?
Yeah.
I mean, like what new info is coming in? Like what deal is going to happen? Like, to me, I'm wondering what's going on with this guy if I'm the Chiefs, and he already very professionally and smoothly shot his way out of Baltimore. So, and has talked nothing but left tackleness, which to me is just cover fire for pay me now, right?
Yeah.
So listen, I'm presenting this somewhat the way we presented Tyreek Hill being traded throughout the course of the year. I read the tea leaves of what I heard Brett Veach talking about Orlando Brown when he was asked. That was not the happiest moment there. Wasn't pissed, didn't, throw out a challenge to the player. But, like, if you're going to do it, now's the time to do it when you have a chance to draft a talented player. And what would he bring if he was traded?
So who's the guy? I mean, you're saying a draft talent player. Who would be – it's the same situation they were in last year.
Well,
Well, they got him in the first place. They didn't like what they had option-wise in the draft.
All right, there are a number of them. Laramie Tunsil is said to be on the block. Right now, I don't know. Would you do a Laramie Tunsil for Orlando Brown? That would not seem to make sense. But
No.
but you could acquire Laramie Tunsil if you can trade Orlando Brown someplace else. If Orlando Brown bring a first round pick? Does
No.
making the Pro Bowl last year?
No.
Listen, in Kansas City, if you watch every down, you definitely said.
Someone loves Bernard Raymond, by the way. I keep seeing his name flashing on the comment.
I know.
Like 15 times.
Yeah. I got them gassed up about this guy.
Yeah.
Here's a
let me finish this thought real quick, and it's just this, and I'll be in 20 seconds. The Chiefs decided he could play left tackle and play at a high level. They convinced themselves of that of half a year with the Baltimore Ravens with a different style offense. He went to the Pro Bowl with a pass-first offense. If you really don't have a left tackle, are you – I'm choked up about this. Are you really going to tell me you would have no interest in Orlando Brown if he's out there if you have nothing?
Well, here are some action. Like, I think here's a scenario that makes sense, right? The Carolina Panthers pick at 6. They don't pick again until round 4, I believe. They have Matt Rule, who's a head coach, who is probably going to get fired this year. You have Fitterer, who's a general manager, who's probably going to fire the head coach, but needs to get some things in order here. If the Panthers do not take a tackle at 6, and I think they end up taking either Kwanu, Cross, or Neal at 6, but let's say they don't. Let's say they go quarterback, right? Their left tackle right now is Chiefs legend Cam Irving, okay? It could be Chiefs legend Orlando Brown, and the thing that the Chiefs don't need this year is draft picks, which is the one thing that the Panthers don't have. So you think like, and here's somebody who wants out of Panthers, Robbie Anderson. And I know the Robbie Anderson contract is kind of, not that easily tradable. They can figure it out, right? They go Robbie Anderson to the Chiefs, Orlando Brown to the Carolina Panthers, or like a future pick, whatever. Like, what does Matt Rule care about a future pick? He's about to get hacked, right? So
right.
So that's one. Carolina has the most cap space in football right now. $24 million in effective. Think about this. They have $24.6 million in the effective cap space. They have the 6th pick, and then they don't have another pick, right? They can incorporate a veteran player. You think about another option would be, if the Chiefs actually want to come out ahead of a trade with the Panthers, they could get Brian Burns, who's a pretty damn good defensive end, and they could go Brian Burns. Like what? Why do you need a pass rusher? Your team's going to suck, right? Brian Burns, Orlando Brown, maybe the Chiefs throw, like a 3rd or 4th in there because Brian Burns is much better than Orlando Brown. But there's another. If they don't like the edge players in this draft, again, we're dealing with the exact same problems they've had for years, which is pay up for veteran talent as opposed to just drafting it. But those are some options that they have.
I want to be clear. I'm spitballing here, but I'm spitballing with some rumblings behind it. Right? But I think this is the time where there's all kinds of crap out there, right?
Well, no doubt.
But
who's the guy though? You still have to get back to who would be the left tackle if you got rid of him.
Well, worst case scenario, we have the Cincinnati thing that happened last year where, Joe Thuney could play left tackle. I mean, Joe Thuney had a wonderful game against Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati against the Bengals. You have Nick Allegretti on the team. You still have Trey Smith. You have Creed Humphrey. In that very game against the Bengals, Andrew Wiley was your right tackle because Niang got hurt. Niang being hurt was the reason you had to put Thuney at left tackle anyway. I think that the issue is last year at this time, there was no Trey Smith. There was no Creed Humphrey. So the question of if we snap the ball tomorrow, who the hell is playing left tackle is a much harder question. Whereas now, if you vacate left guard and put Thuney at left tackle, you have a pretty 2/3 of your interior offensive line is still pretty damn good. And you can kind of mix and match there. Like that, if that's your absolute floor, probably fine, right? And at 16 million APY, it makes a lot more financial sense to have the guy playing left tackle than 16 million APY to have the guy playing left guard.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I know that Brett Veach is aggressive, and and he's moved players, right? He's now moved them both ways. He's gone and gotten them, and he's sent them. And if you're really overhauling, and resetting kind of the shot clock, and you're willing to take a step back, dependent upon what you can get. And I think if you look at the draft and
swallow the first round pick you gave away.
Yeah. I mean, you could, I mean, is there a team in the 20s? If you ended up with a third first round pick, now you can move two of them maybe to go up and get that wide out, or to go up and get.
Ain't no way Orlando Brown's going to move for a first round pick.
Because he didn't get a first round pick from the Chiefs either. Yeah. Like they got a second back. It was basically the value of like the 45th pick.
Well, there are people that said it was also the value of the 29th pick when it was all said and done. It depends on whose chart you want to look at.
Sure. But I think that I agree with Jeff.
My point is this. I get it that everybody in Kansas City doesn't think that, but you just talked about the Panthers. Anyone whose ass is on the line and has to have a tackle, and Cam Irving is a great example, and I'd have to go back and I'd have to look through every team out there. But like, if you're the
New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Saints need a tackle because they just got rid of Teron Armstead. They have some.
Who's the Eagles left
tackle? Jordan Mailata. He's good.
Okay. Who's the Steelers left tackle?
Fence post.
Okay. You're seeing my point here. Like there are teams there that could use a tackle. And if the Chiefs paid what was essentially bottom of the first round for him, and then he went to the Pro Bowl, I get it. We looked at the snaps of him. Jeff told everybody in Chiefs Kingdom, listen, this is what it's going to look like. And it looked exactly like what Jeff said. both Eric and I were like, all right, you're optimistic. Here's the best case scenario, blah, blah, blah. Jeff said, this is what it's going to look like. And so if Jeff saw that, the Chiefs saw it, and they still gave up first-round talent. His resume's better today after a year of playing left tackle and being voted to the Pro Bowl than it was a year ago, and it only took one team to think he was worth that kind of draft capital. Why would you tell me that there absolutely isn't a team that would view it the same way this year?
I just don't see it. I literally, I think we're into like,
okay. All right.
We're into a territory here that's just hard to fathom anybody giving up a first round pick for Orlando Brown and the Chiefs. I'll hear the possibility of Joe Thuney playing left tackle, but still, even that is a bit of a reach for me to buy into. I just think that they got him on the tag. I think he'll end up playing on the tag. And then I think we'll see what happens after next year.
Do they need a wide receiver, Jeff? Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. We hear all that. Fans want to see it. I've even heard media people saying, whatever it takes to get Deebo Samuel, which I don't get. But is that something they should be at least trying to do?
They need a receiver that can be here after next season, after this season. Obviously, they only have one guy in that group who is under contract after this year. So, Mecole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, Josh Gordon, all those guys will be free agents. So, they need to draft somebody who can be there. But I also don't think you don't have to come away with this heavyweight name. I think you can find players who can assist you in building a good offense, who can grow into your offense. The possibility of anybody in this draft walking in and being the dominant Tyreek Hill level receiver, not even Tyreek Hill ability wise, but just putting up the kind of numbers he put up, coming close to it. I think if you get a guy who can get 50 balls for you in a rookie class, you've done pretty well for yourself. I think we've been spoiled by what Jamar Chase has done in Cincinnati and what Justin Jefferson has done in Minnesota. Ultimately, this offense is not going to play that way. They're going to have a lot of guys catching passes, and you have to look at, can Mecole Hardman be something moving forward? I don't think he'll be on this team next year, but you got to find that out. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to try to make a name for himself and make some money. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to try to prove what he's worth, the contract they gave him. So all these guys, at some point, run out of footballs. And so why would you spend so much time trying to find a rookie to come in and dominate when he's not going to have the opportunity to do that anyway?
Even somebody, and again, I'm throwing a name out there. I liked him pre-draft. He's probably, you can have him for cheap, like a 5th round pick, 6th round pick. Something like Andy Isabella. If you come out of rounds 1 through 3 and you don't get a wide receiver you like, there are disgruntled wide receivers or there are wide receivers that can be had around the league for nothing, right? Andy Isabella is like, I imagine Andy Reid would say, like, look, Cliff Kingsbury's kind of a boob. I could probably make more out of it. As Jeff said, 50 catches. I can get 50 catches out of Andy Isabella for a 6th-round pick from Arizona on a rookie contract with my eyes closed. Like that kind of thing. The Deebo thing. I mean, Deebo's a really good football player, but I think the hard part is, and I think that this is true about Devontae Adams, I think it's also true about Tyreek Hill. He'll never have more value to another team than he does on the 49ers. Like, I don't think Tyreek Hill is a wonderful player. He's going to be in the Chiefs Ring of Honor, all that stuff. He's not going to be as valuable to the Dolphins as he was to KC. Adams is the same way. Like, that's the tricky part about trading for these guys, because, when we do all of our statistical analysis, we say teams and schemes. Every time you change teams and schemes, the regression is the rule. Right. And so if you're amazing, regression only can go one way. It can only go down. So, like, if you're going to acquire Deebo coming off of a 1,400-yard receiving season and a season where he ran the ball better than any running back probably on his own team, like, you're buying that, and you're probably not getting that. Right. And that's probably true about any player you trade for with that kind of capital right now.
Jeff, what makes this draft a success?
I think if you get a couple of difference makers in this draft, if you get guys who can come in and give you what Creed Humphrey gave you, give you what Nick Bolton gave you, I think what L'Jarius Sneed gave you, if you find a couple guys who can be that caliber player for you, one of those guys being an edge player, I think you've done pretty well for yourself. I definitely believe it takes a while to evaluate most of these guys, but with 12 picks, I think you've got to find somebody of that caliber who can help you right away, because obviously the defense is a mess right now on paper. There aren't a lot of answers out there after the draft that sound great. I mean, you can bring back guys like Melvin Ingram, but I don't know if he wants to be here or not, but he's a year older. I still think part of his success had to do more with not playing the first half season in Pittsburgh. So you don't get as banged up. Too. Yeah, Jerick McKinnon. So it's like to live on that. I think you have to find good players after the first round. If they come in the first round, great. But I think if you're able to find 2 difference makers, you've got a big win.
2 difference makers and 10 goose eggs.
No, not goose eggs. Guys that you are allowed to develop over time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, well, guys like Chris Jones wasn't coming into the NFL balling like crazy. He became Chris Jones like 3 years later.
But he was a contributor from the get-go. Right. Yeah. Like, he contributed to it. Eric, define a successful draft for this team.
We're in a different world right now, right? Last year when you only have, you have 2 second-round picks. You have a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th. Like, those guys all kind of have to hit. Now you get twice as many swings, right? So to me, I actually think, I think you want 3 Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey type players in this draft, right? I think you want 3 guys who start right away, who are first team all rookie team. You get another 3 that are Juan Thornhill types, right? Which are like solid contributing players, maybe not starters, but kind of, guys that you can win with. And then the rest of them, is what it is, right? Write them off. Now, the cool thing is when you have 12 guys and you can write off 6, that used to be your whole draft class. Now it's half your draft class, and it's the price of doing business. That's how the Chiefs are now. And that's, when you look back at the team, I believe they should be trying to emulate, which is the 2019 Patriots. That's how that Patriots team could basically whiff on 60 to 70% of the draft picks for a decade and still be a competitive team. Is they got the ingredients, the quarterback, and you got the good coach, and you have throwing numbers at every single draft. And they got those 3 ingredients right now. And I think, like I said, they have to pretty much try not to get those kind of results, I think, this year.
They have 12 picks. 8 of them are in the first 4 rounds. In a draft that they themselves are saying the sweet spot is 30 to 60. All right. So they've got 4 in that range. The 4th one is 62. But they've got the ammunition to move up. I think they've got to come away with 3 starting players and, maybe 4 and a total.
First year starters.
I think, yes, I do. I mean, I because there are spots to start. Like if you're a corner and you can't beat Rashad Fenton and you go in round 1 or 2, I don't think Fenton sucks either, but I don't think Rashad Fenton should be starting. So if you go in round 1 or 2 as a corner, yeah, you should start. I think if the Chiefs take you that high, L'Jarius Sneed was a 4th rounder and he was the best corner that the team had the moment he stepped on the field, right? Like they're pretty good at it. They scheme it to give you a chance to have success. They have a glaring hole at defensive end. If you have a pulse, you will start at defensive end. I mean, you've got to be.
Well, Eric said Josh Kane, though.
I mean, 4th round. He was a 4th rounder.
Yeah. I mean,
and a 4th rounder who, with his athletic ability, you knew he was a project, right?
Max Crosby was a 4th rounder.
And came on a little bit.
And look, is Josh Kando over? Like we already stand,
No,
like,
but history tells us yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
recent history of
the Chiefs' history too, because they don't develop players, right? Like
that's what I'm saying. The Chiefs' history tells us yes, but I mean, I do think that you can, I think you should expect them to find a defensive end. It's a deep defensive end class. They've got to find a defensive end. They've got to find a corner, and I think they've got to find a tackle or a wideout, and preferably they find all 4. And like I said, I wouldn't mind 8 picks, 2 each at each position. And take your swings at it. And then out of the 7s, those are your backups. Maybe you find the Trey Smith of a wide receiver, the Trey Smith of a DN. I think that's unlikely. DNs pretty much show themselves, and you have to take them high. But you could find a diamond in the rough wideout who's your slot guy. You could find a diamond in the rough guy who can, maybe he's the guard. He becomes a stud guard or a bulldozer right tackle, and you live now with the way your offensive line is set up, and you maul people and you run the ball more often. I know. I think this is. I don't think you can trade Tyreek Hill and come out of this draft and be like, we had a standard 7-round draft. This needs to be a good draft. You've got the ammunition and picks in a spot that's there. Make it happen, right? I think at least 3 starters, 2 of them starting this year, and 3 other guys that are going to be contributors.
By the way, a little quick report here that I'm seeing. Mekhi Becton is available, possibly.
Love it. I mean, a mountain of a tackle. I'm all for it. Why is he available?
Yeah,
that's a good question. He was injured last year, only had 1 game. Drafted by a previous regime. I think that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So. Anyway,
what would you give for him?
Orlando Brown and just Orlando. I would just wheel Orlando Brown over there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the Jets are going to just take the more expensive player.
Yeah.
And what is a like swap or a better player that they're giving away.
They require you 2 guys turning into ninjas and showing up at the Jets offices and somehow shooting heroin into the veins of Joe Douglas, their general manager.
I mean, Joe Douglas, right? There were rumors that Joe Douglas was going to take Jermaine Johnson at 4. Anything's possible right now.
Would 29 get it done?
29, I think would get it done, right? Like, because he's got 2 more years of a rookie deal plus a 5th-year option. You'd have to get his medical straightened out. I think the issue right now is, unless this stuff is happening on the back of all these things, draft day trades that involve players are really hard because the guy's got to pass a physical for it to make sense. And this isn't the NBA where you draft a guy and then trade him later. This is usually a situation where you trade before the pick is made. So, but maybe those things are being done. Maybe he's in Kansas City right now. Who the hell knows?
Becton at 4 says to me that the Jets are looking offensive line at 4.
Yes.
Take a tackle at 4. That's what it says to me. And
Ike Ekwonu or I mean, the thing is, I think that it's crazy, but Ike Ekwonu, Evan Neal, Charles Cross is our highest rated tackle.
So that means what? Well. They do an edge at 10?
That's Jermaine Johnson, right?
Wow.
Yeah. There are rumors that they're going to trade 10 for Deebo Samuel.
Yeah. That's your receiver.
So if you got your
no edge rusher there, no.
If you got a left tackle and you got Deebo Samuel and then you got another 1st rounder at 29, you can present that to your fan base.
You get Jahan Dotson at 29 or something like that.
By the way,
he's cool.
I want to tell you that in 1975, the Kansas City Chiefs made 11 picks. Do you know how many of those 11 picks played in the NFL?
So you said that on the air today. I'll let Jeff try to guess.
Yeah.
How many?
Yeah.
Out of 11?
Out of 11.
That wasn't a Tom Condon year, was it?
No.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to guess 2.
One. It's the worst Chiefs draft ever. He had zero value. If you go to the Pro Football Reference and they assign value, 0 is a running back named Maurice LeGrand who went in the 6th round.
Who was the first round pick?
They traded their first round pick, which was number 6 overall, along with Curly Culp, to the Houston Oilers for John Matuzak, who they then quickly shipped off to the Raiders. And the pick that they used I can't remember the guy's name. Here, I'll tell you exactly who it was a 7-time Pro Bowl linebacker. The Oilers took Robert Brazile.
Hall of
Famer.
There weren't a lot of great Chiefs drafts back in the. I remember they drafted Ethan Horton to play running back.
Yes.
And the guy ended up being a Pro Bowl tight end.
Yeah.
Carolina.
Yeah.
And he ended up being a Pro Bowl tight end for the Raiders.
That is hard to do, to have one guy play in the league and ship off your first round pick, have that be a Hall of Famer, and ship a Hall of Famer with him.
Yeah.
That's the worst draft. I will guarantee you this year's draft will be better. Jeff, who do they take at 29 and 30? We'll wrap with that.
Oh, the
Or
pressure
do they
pick.
trade it? What's your prediction on 29 and 30?
Look at my folder. I think they stay put. I've been saying Boye Mafe on TV all week long, so I'll go Boye Mafe at 29, and I will go Jahan Dotson at 30.
Okay. Eager, what are you thinking?
Okay. I am also, okay. I'm looking at the odds right now because you know me, I love the betting of it. Okay. I'm going to go with Jahan Dotson, and whose draft position prop, by the way, is 30.5. If you think the Chiefs are going to take him, bet under. I'm also going to go, and this one's going to be a little tricky. Are they a man cover? I'm going to take corner. No, I'm not going corner. I'm going to go Boye Mafe after that too. It could be Arnold Ibikite, but I know Ibikite seems more like a Bob Sutton edge, right? Like a stand-up guy. I think that Boye Mafe is more of like the set the edge, be big kind of defensive end that our guy Spags covets.
I am going to go Arnold Ibikite. This is a longer
This is a big
arms.
Screw you to Eric, huh?
Yeah, screw you. Longer arms on Ibikite over Boye Mafe. So, and I think he is quite the explosive player. I've watched more tape. I watched the videos, same goofy videos we all watch, right? I just love people like, I've been watching the tape. Oh, settle down. Arnold Ibikite, and I'm going to take Daxton Hill. You know, I have my crush on Daxton Hill. I'm going to go.
You had to give Jeff his Michigan guy.
I did. You know me. Yeah. I'm always kissing up. You know what? Also, I should point out, did you see the lid in the background?
Oh, I see that.
I'm trying to be more like Jeff every day.
I saw your wife in the.
Where's that hat from?
House.
Where's it from? It's from the store. We were out and about, and my wife goes, "Oh, there's the hat Chadiha always wears." They had a rack.
Gotcha.
And,
okay.
And I was like, "Oh, I should be more like Jeff, huh? Is that what you're getting at?" And she goes, "It's a good-looking hat." I bought.
Being more like Jeff is a great start, I would say.
There you go.
It's my goal. Yes. And they bumped into each other at the store the other day as well.
That's right. And she recognized the hat. She said,
yes.
"Hey."
Yeah. She's like, "Oh yeah, get it." So I'm cool too. Just so you know, I got the cool man Chadiha hat as well.
I got to catch up.
Yeah, you got to get your act together. All right, that's it. That's our picks. We're going to be back at it tomorrow night. By the way, if you're watching right now, if you hit the like, the love button, the subscribe button, tell your friends, give us retweets, all that kind of stuff. We'd really appreciate it. Don't cost nothing, but it helps us out a lot. So we would really appreciate it if you would do that for us on whatever platform you're at. If you're catching us on the podcast on on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, you can be a part of the conversation in the chat room as you follow along as we stream live 9 o'clock on every other Tuesday during the off season, every Tuesday during the season for Red, Gold, and Bold. Usually we're Thursdays every other Tuesday for Two Deep, our full NFL podcast. I'm going to come your way tomorrow. That's Wednesday night for that because, of course, we have the NFL draft happening on Thursday night, and we'll hit you with both podcasts next week as well. So for Jeff Chadiha for the NFL Network, NFL.com, and the Cool Hat Club for Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. You can check out their great work at NFL.com and PFF.com. I am Soren Petro, Sports Radio 810 WHB. You can see me at 810WHB.com. Thank you for joining us here on Red, Gold, and Bold.